An off day in the Big Apple. Endless opportunities. A walk through Central Park. Go shopping on Fifth Avenue. Go see museums and notable landmarks. Or, like Rowdy Tellez, and work on your off day on MLB Network. How about Big Rowdy showing up on TV? We got a mailbag episode coming up here on Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, June 14th. The Brewers continuing their road trip. This is Locked On Brewers. I'm Dominic Cotroneo. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Blue Nile. Make your moments sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Brewers listeners can get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. And yes, that includes engagement rings. Use code LOCKEDON at checkout at BlueNile.com. I'm the statistician for Bally Sports Wisconsin. Currently, though, if you're watching on YouTube, where we post all of our video versions of these podcasts, I'm not in my home office. I am again on the road, back in New York City, but not here to cover Brewers and Mets, unfortunately, here tonight. As actually, I am with Brian Anderson, getting ready to work for TBS here tonight for Rays and Yankees. So, quick note right off the top, there will not be an episode in your feed tomorrow. At least I'm not planning on it. It's just too much to work my TBS game and go back and try to give a competent podcast to what happened. So we're going to take tomorrow's episode off, have full reaction on Thursday morning will be our next episode. So wanted to get to a few mailbags here, wanted to get to some headlines. Not a very deep podcast because this is a massive series. And I just want to start with three things right off of the top. We talked about it in Monday's episode, the fact that the Brewers can make a run still. And this may feel like rock bottom, and it may feel like, oh my goodness, this is the worst the team has looked all season, and now they got to go up against the big bad Mets, who are currently leading the National League. They took Sunday Night Baseball against the Angels, had the off day yesterday, and now they're ready to go here at home. They're coming off of a 5-5 West Coast road trip, which, look, the Brewers just had their West Coast road trip, right, or at least a brief moment in the West Coast, big long trip. A team like the Mets going 5-5, and they're very happy with it, given what they have going on with the starting pitching. We talked about their potent offense and how difficult it will be to try to slow those guys down. There are some legit bats they're going to have to try to figure out. Starling Marte, obviously Pete Alonso's having a great year right now too. Mark Canha, he wants to be called Canha this year, even though he's actually told us Mark Canha over the years in Oakland. Nonetheless, they're a pretty darn good offense with everything going on. And oh, by the way, Francisco Lindor, Eduardo Escobar, it's a pretty good lineup. And Adrian Houser gets the ball here tonight. He will go up against Chris Bassett, 6:05 Central Time, 7:05 local here in Queens. And then tomorrow, Corbin Burns against David Peterson. And then finally on Thursday, it'll be Aaron Ashby against Tyler McGill. All these games will be at 6:05 on Bally Sports Wisconsin. Coverage beginning at 5:30 with Craig and Vinny in studio. I will be back on Thursday. So, again, if you follow me on Twitter at Dom_Cotroneo or follow our Locked On Brewers Twitter, you won't see as many tweets, at least tonight. I'll be back watching the game tomorrow night, just like everybody else. So, don't expect all the content that you normally see from my feed here tonight. Again, no episode until Thursday. So first thing off the top, facing the Mets, huge series. You take 2 out of 3 here, and a lot is forgiven. Is it going to be easy? No. Edwin Diaz lurking in that bullpen, arguably the second best closer in baseball behind Josh Hader this season. He hit 102 the other day against the Angels. Sugar is his nickname, and man, it's nasty. You do not want to face him when you are trailing. The Brewers are going to have a hard time trying to come back in the 9th inning late against him. So attack early, attack often against this Mets weakened starting staff that they're dealing with right now. Scherzer's throwing bullpens. deGrom's not going to be available until the second half. So if there's time to catch him, it's right now, trying to get back on track against the Mets and really kind of punch another team in the mouth of saying, look, I know we've been down and battered and bruised and bloodied, but they're still hanging around. They're still a great team here in the NL Central. In full disclosure, at the time of recording, the Cardinals had just tied things up against the Pirates. It's 5-5 in the top of the 7th inning. Dylan Carlson hitting a clutch 3-run home run off the Pirates. Look, it's the Pirates. You can't pray for the Pirates. They've lost 6 in a row going into yesterday. So, again, that game has not gone final while I'm recording this episode, so you may know the answer to whether the Cardinals won or not and whether it's still a one-game deficit or if the Brewers are virtually tied heading into today in the Central. But, again, standings don't matter in June. Talk to me after the trade deadline. I look back to last season. I look back to the way the schedule shook out. Of course, the Brewers got hot in late May and most of July, and especially late June, where they were really cold there in May, right when Willy Adames arrived. Remember, they had lost a series to the Cardinals, lost a series at home to the Braves. They had a really tough go of it. They went 2-4 on that 6-game homestand. And then they got swept in a 2-game series against the Royals, and then Willy Adames arrives, and they get things going again. They split against the Padres at the time when the Padres were the hottest team in baseball last May, and nobody thought that was even possible given the way that they were playing with Tatis and Hosmer and Myers all playing well. Blake Snell was starting in that series too. I've looked back to that series as kind of being a turning point because the Brewers, that was the only playoff team they had played for a long, long time, whereas the last time they came to New York was right after the 4th of July. They lost 2 out of 3. One of those being a doubleheader freak game that Josh Hader had blown his previous last save in. So you really had a chance to win all 3 games. And also you had a Jacob deGrom start in one of those games. And deGrom actually, that was the game that Hader gave up the walk-off in. So he had a no decision in a great battle between deGrom and Burns. deGrom struck out 10, but he gave up 2 earned runs. Home runs by Luis Urias and Jace Peterson off deGrom. So I look back to that series. The Brewers gave the Mets all they can handle when they were still a really darn good team at this time last season. And they match up very, very well. Good pitching against great offense. The Brewers have the slight edge in the bullpen right now, I would say. This is a huge series to find out legitimately how good you can be against a good team. Yes, I know they're down Colton Wong right now, but aside from him, this team's pretty healthy. So getting the at-bats back for Adames and Renfroe is going to be huge, and that's healthy on the offensive side of things. We know they're not healthy on the pitching side of things. Also, talking about teams going into slumps, have you all seen what's happening to the Dodgers right now? The Dodgers have lost 8 of their last 12. Their manager is speaking to the media saying that not happy with their approaches, not happy with their outlook. I mean, everyone thought everything was A-OK in Dodgerland. They've won 37 games this season, which obviously is not bad, but everyone's acting like the sky is falling here in Milwaukee, and the Brewers are only 3 games back of the Dodgers for the second-best record in the National League. I mean, it's starting to crunch up a little bit here in the end of this first third of the season, as there's 100 games to go starting today for the Brew Crew. Cold stretches happen to good teams all the time. Look at the Dodgers. They're 6 games back in the AL Central, or excuse me, not the Dodgers, the White Sox. They're 6 games back in the AL Central. Teams go on cold stretches all the time. So don't hit the panic button. Relax. It's going to be okay. Lastly, I don't know if you saw this. By the time you're listening to this, these tickets might be live. They go live today, 10 a.m., Brewers.com. $5.63 tickets in honor of Craig Counsell, tying Phil Garner for the most wins in franchise history as a manager, 563. So there are 5,000 tickets available Monday through Wednesday, the night games against St. Louis next week. So they're just $5.63. I don't know exactly where they're located. Generally, they've been in the right field bleachers. So those go live at 10 o'clock today on Brewers.com. 5,000 tickets available, so go get those. Let's jump into these mailbags, shall we? Some good questions from our usual suspects, and a lot of fun to get into these. Before we do that, I'll tell you about BlueNile.com, an original online jeweler that has been helping out customers, whether you know everything about fine jewelry, know nothing about fine jewelry, if you're ready to pop the question, if you're celebrating a milestone moment, they've got everything you could need to find a piece as unique as the one you're giving it to with the modern convenience of online shopping. Again, it's Blue Nile, Nile like the river.com. They have simple tools that let you choose the diamond shape, the size, the clarity, even the setting style for the engagement ring of her dreams. Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then handcraft her perfect engagement ring, and each one is truly one of a kind. If you're looking for fine jewelry and having trouble, don't worry, they've got experts available 24/7 via phone or via chat to help you find a gift for any budget. And right now, Locked On Brewers listeners can get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This is a podcast exclusive, and it includes engagement rings. So use code LOCKEDON, just simply LOCKED ON. And every order is insured, it ships for free, and it arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. I've got a handful of mailbags here. We're going to go through them one by one here, and then get you ready to be on with your day in just a little bit. Short episode today. First question came from Nick. What would a move look like between a pitcher or hitter? How are the Brewers deciding if they need to make a move? Who do I think it would be? Are they going to go get a pitcher, or are they going to go get a hitter? When it comes to a pitcher, it really rests on Brandon Woodruff's health and how he responds to the medication that he's getting from Raynaud's syndrome. In case you have missed it these last couple of days, his ankle is A-OK. He's ready to return from the ankle, but now he's dealing with the new sensation called Raynaud's syndrome, where blood vessels in his fingertips cause discoloration and numbness in certain grips and certain grip strength in his right hand right now. It has happened in other baseball players. According to Brandon Woodruff, he has met other players that have dealt with it and said it takes anywhere from a couple of weeks to even a couple of months, and he's trying to learn how he is responding to his medication. Whether or not the Brewers go get a pitcher, specifically a starting pitcher, lies on the fact of, is Brandon Woodruff going to be healthy enough to pitch the entire second half uninterrupted? I'm not saying he's going to be out until the All-Star break, but they're still trying to figure out when can he throw breaking balls again. That's what's really impacting his grip right now. He doesn't feel it quite like he expects to when he's gripping breaking balls. Fastballs are fine, but you can't survive in the big leagues by just throwing fastballs and changeups, especially a guy like Brandon Woodruff. So they're still figuring that out. If it seems like it's going to be an extended time, I could see them trying to make a move for a starting pitcher. How much do the Brewers want to make a splash remains to be seen. Obviously, the top starting pitcher available on the market right now is Frankie Montas, coming from the Oakland A's. The beauty of Frankie is that he's got an extra year of control, which is also the curse because that makes his asking price even higher. Look, the A's are the worst team in the American League, them and the Royals this season, but the A's are not going to be competing anytime soon. The Astros are still running that division. The Mariners and the Angels are loading up, getting ready to go. The Rangers have Marcus Semien and Corey Seager ready to rip as they add in some arms in the next couple of years. The A's are going to have a very high asking price because Frankie Montas is really the last guy they can trade. That makes sense in this window. I know I've mentioned Ramon Laureano previously on this podcast. Ramon's got 4 years of control, including this season. So that's a really hefty price if you're going to go get Ramon Laureano, who's really their only piece of offense so far in the young season. So Frankie, there are other guys that are available, but starting pitching, just like hitting, is so expensive. Relievers are a lot cheaper, and that's where I lead to the Brewers. If they're going to acquire a pitcher, it might be a middle reliever. Remember, no Gustave, no Cousins, no Gott right now, and that's only temporary, though, for Gott. Gustave is in Arizona right now. You look at Cousins, he's on the 60-day IL. Justin Topa is still on the 60-day IL. Middle relief is where they're going to need help right now. And Perdomo on the IL with an elbow issue, too. So if they're going to add somebody pitching-wise, I could see it being in the bullpen sooner as opposed to later as these guys work their way back. And don't forget, in 6 days, now 5 days, the roster is scheduled to go back down to 13 pitchers. You're carrying 26 total players right now. There's no technical limit on how many pitchers you can carry. Right now, the Brewers are carrying 14 pitchers, 5 starters, 9 relievers. That will have to shrink to 13 pitchers starting next Monday. Keep that in mind as they start to cycle through their potential moves moving forward. I could see a middle reliever happening first, a hitter closer to the deadline. I don't see a Willy Adames scenario where the Brewers make an under-the-radar move and go get somebody like Willy that obviously you can't predict what kind of an impact like Willy made to this year's team, like getting somebody that would make that kind of impact on this year's team. But I could see that being more toward the deadline when it's up against the time crunch. The other team's like thinking, oh, well, we got to get something out of this guy if he's a rental, like Eduardo Escobar last season with the Diamondbacks. So that's what I look at with the Brew Crew this season. I think a middle reliever first and then a hitter closer to the end of the deadline. And then we'll see if it's going to be a starter. Next question came from Nate. if the playoffs started right now, who would be the starting center fielder with Andrew McCutchen coming on hot? It would be Tyrone Taylor on the current roster. Okay, I'm not saying they're not going to go out and acquire somebody. On the current roster, Tyrone Taylor would be starting in center field. I would imagine he would be batting ninth if the playoffs started today. The reason for that is Andrew McCutchen has only played 15 games in center field since the start of the 2018 season. 15 games in 4 years. I know he tore his ACL in 2020, and obviously he's 36 years old. I mean, he moves well, but he doesn't move like a center fielder. He can handle left field. I don't think he can handle center field anymore. Whereas Lorenzo Cain, he moves great for his age. He can still go out and get it. Still got the great range going on, but for the bat, for the postseason, Tyrone's a league average defensive center fielder. And don't let that lose sight of the fact that, look, when Tyrone misses a couple of plays, like we saw over the weekend in Washington, he probably should have caught that ball that was near his ankles. Ended up didn't hurting the Brewers, but those are plays that Lorenzo Cain makes look extremely easy. And that's not normal. What Cain is able to do, he would have caught that ball like letter high and like never even broken a sweat. Whereas Tyrone had trouble judging it. The hardest ball to judge is the ball straight out of center fielder. And he comes in and tries. He's also made some great catches in right field. Tyrone is a solid defender, just not a Gold Glove caliber like Lorenzo Cain. But I believe Tyrone Taylor would be the starting center fielder if the playoffs started today. That's a good question. I want to get into this no trade question that came from Ryan. It takes a little deeper of a breakdown to get through this. Before I do that, I want to just quickly update you about Rock Auto. Ever-increasing number of makes and models. It's impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts your car could need. You can endure pointless or intimidating questioning behind the counter and wait for them to order parts from a warehouse when, wait a minute, they're going to order it. Why don't I just order it myself from rockauto.com? You're going to save time. You're going to save money. Look, these chain stores are going to mark it up by 30%, 50%, even 100% more for the same exact parts that you can find yourself at rockauto.com. Prices are reliably low for every single customer. They've been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. So when you go to rockauto.com, you'll see all the parts available. When you see their How Did You Hear About Us box, make sure you write Locked On in that box so they know that we sent you over there. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. Two more questions here on the mailbag before we get you ready for the Mets here tonight. This question came from Ryan. I missed this. That is the media talking about Yelich's no trade clause? But he's saying that what is the no trade clause? How does that all work out in a contract? This is a good question. And we got two Yelich questions here to get ready to close out the pod. This is a good question, Ryan. So no trade clauses, there's a couple different ways players can either earn a no trade clause or have it written into their contract. In this scenario, Yelich signed a free agent contract, or an extension, I should say, that included and negotiated in a no trade clause. Why would a player want a no trade clause? Well, for an organization like the Brewers and their reputation of trading players, you would like to be aware of a trade. And let's start with the definition right off the bat. No trade clause is a misleading name. No trade clause basically means the team can't trade you without your approval. Meaning, if the Brewers came to Christian Yelich tomorrow and say, hey, the Yankees are making us a great offer for you, here's the offer, would you be willing to be traded to New York? He has the option to say no. And you'll see this happen at the end of careers for veteran players, saying like this happened with Max Scherzer last year with the Nationals. Like generally there's like 10 teams. Zach Greinke went through this. There's like 10 teams to say there's absolutely no chance I go to those places. Here are 5 teams I would maybe want to look at. Everyone else you'll have to bring to me. That's why a player would want a no-trade clause, to really feel like they're back in control in a scenario that they don't get much control in when it comes to trades. The reason why a team would want a no-trade clause is because, for one, it's comfort. You know this guy is going to be a Brewer for life, and that's how it was marketed when Christian Yelich signed the contract. It gives a great view, externally to the fans, saying, hey, we signed him, and he's not doing these opt-outs. Look at Carlos Correa in Minnesota. Look at Nolan Arenado's deal in Colorado. No opt-outs, no trade clause. hey, we're committing to him. It makes an organization look good, and it helps them externally with things like that. So it can be negotiated into a contract at the time of signing, which was the case here with Yelich and the Brewers. The other way you can actually earn a no-trade clause is something called 10 and 5 rights. 10 and 5 rights is broken down into two separate segments. 10 meaning 10 years of service time. We talked a lot about service time throughout the CBA negotiations, but just know that a year of service time is when you're on the active roster in the big leagues. I believe it's 184 days this season is considered a full year of service time. And service time is what allows you to unlock arbitration. And that's after 3 years, yada, yada, so on. Okay, that's not the point of this. 10 years of service time is the holy grail for the Players Association. That's when your lifetime pension kicks in. You get a whole bunch of new benefits, road benefits as well, like as in your level of suite that you're allowed to request, family travel perks, things like that. There's a whole list of things that when you reach 10 years of service time, you are the cream of the crop. It is very rare to reach 10 years of service time. So that's the first half of these 10 and 5 rights. When you make it to 10 years, you've made it. Congratulations. You're one of the best players to ever play this game. Not saying you're a Hall of Famer, but it's very hard to get to 10 years of service time. The 5 part of this comes from 5 consecutive years with one team. So in the case of, let's say, Elvis Andrus a couple of years ago with the Texas Rangers, he was getting shopped around. He had full 10 and 5 rights. He didn't have a no-trade clause negotiated into his contract, but because he had 10 and 5 rights, having 10 years of service time and at least 5 consecutive years with one team, granted he had spent really his whole career with the Texas Rangers, his big league career anyway, he could void any trade he wanted to because he earned no trade clause. When it comes to Yelich's contract, because he has it negotiated in, he doesn't have to worry about this, but he would have earned 10 and 5 rights in the year 2024 under this current deal. So he could have been traded without his approval up until 2024 when he's currently at 8 years of service time. So in 2 years, he would get 10 years of service time, and he's been with the Brewers since 2018. So technically, this is his 5th consecutive season with the Brewers. He would have had it this year if he had had 10 years of service time. So in 2 years, he would have earned 10 and 5 rights, even without that no-trade clause. So looking at the rest of this contract, he's guaranteed through 2028. He ain't going anywhere. He's getting $26 million a year. You would like to figure it out. You would like to see him start to perform a little bit better, which he has been. And then in the final year in 2029, he has a mutual option worth $20 million and a $6.5 million buyout. That'll be his age 37 season. So he's 30 now. He's got another 6 years with the Brew Crew. So buckle up, hang out, and get ready to watch a lot of Christian Yelich. Great question, though, Ryan. I love breaking the business side of baseball down for fans. It may be intimidating to ask sometimes. I think it's really important to understand how that side of the world works. When you see these CBA negotiations, you hear about arbitration time, you hear about Rule 5 draft. I can talk about this stuff ad nauseum. I could bore you to death with it. But just a little inside baseball there for you. Last question came from Nacho, also having to do with Christian Yelich. MVP Nacho asked, what is working for Christian Yelich since he's moved to the leadoff spot? Let's jump into the metrics, shall we? So it's a very small sample size, and I'm just going through these last 5 games that he's been in the leadoff spot for the Brewers. So overall, Yelich, he's back above 240 for his batting average, which doesn't sound great, I understand, but to see some signs of life out of him is great. Also, the leadoff home run on Saturday was certainly great to see. But in these 5 games, he is now 9 for 22. That's a .409 batting average. However, just 1 extra base hit, which was the leadoff homer on Saturday. But there's one other stat that really jumped out at me at this. He's only walked once in his 23 plate appearances since moving to the leadoff spot. We think of Christian Yelich as a guy like, hey, he may not be hitting right now, but he's drawing his walks. He's only drawn 1 walk in these 23 plate appearances. So I dove into the numbers, just looking at it, and his swing rate is just marginally higher, not crazy higher than his actual season swing rate. That's just overall swinging at pitches, regardless whether they're strikes or not strikes. But what I see, though, is that just under half of his plate appearances, 10 of his 23 plate appearances since moving to the leadoff spot, have ended in 4 pitches or less. So he's only got that one walk. It's really either a quick AB or a marathon AB, as in 7 or 8 pitches. Yelich has a knack for fouling off pitches. He's swinging and missing about the exact same rate as he is during the regular season, as he is here in the leadoff spot. So that's not really it. I see a guy that's being a little more aggressive, but not overly aggressive. It's just marginal. But the fact that he's not taking as many walks in a position that you would think it would be natural for him to take more walks is rather surprising, which is why Craig Counsell moved him to the leadoff spot in the first place, to see more strikes and to swing at more strikes. He is in an opportunity now to be the table setter, to get base hits, and to get on base. He can get walks, of course, but when you're the leadoff man to start off a game, they're going to throw you strikes. You're Christian Yelich. They got to throw you strikes. They don't want to put you on base for free. So he is seeing more strikes. And the last thing on the net metrics, too, something we've noticed these last couple of days, he's hitting it up the middle more. In fact, almost 10 points more on average up the middle for his contact than he has all season long. His season-long rate is 35% up the middle, whereas in these last 5 games, it's 44%. That's certainly encouraging for Yelich, seeing him go up the middle. We've seen him go opposite field a couple of times, too. We know his power is to left center field and to straightaway center. Maybe that's a sign of things to come. And the home run, of course, to dead center field at Nationals Park, a very hard place to hit a dead center homer in. Cool moment there for Yelich. Those are some of the numbers that I'm looking forward to seeing. I imagine he's going to stay in a leadoff spot as long as Colton Wong's on the injured list for another 5 days or so. He's going to stick around there, and he's doing it against lefties and righties. You'll see a lefty tomorrow in Peterson, so I wonder how Craig Counsell's going to shake out that lineup tomorrow against the Mets. Good question there from Nacho. Fun little question came from one of my best friends in the world, Amanda, back home in Arizona. If y'all have visited spring training, let's say 5, 6, 7 years ago, if you had gone down to Tucson, if you know about Tucson, Arizona, look up the old Cactus League days. Look up the old travel schedule of Yuma and Tucson, and then Mesa, and then Peoria. The travel was really rough, kind of like what it was in Florida. Now, obviously, no team in Tucson, no team in Yuma, but there's a Tucson delicacy known as EG's. It's basically a sub place. They call them grinders, but they have these awesome fruit smoothie type, slushies called EG's, spelled EEGEES. EG's are a Tucson staple. Years ago, they did not make it in Phoenix, and now they're expanding back into Phoenix. So my friend Amanda mentioned, hey, how do you feel about EG's moving to Phoenix? It's a big deal for my hometown. And next time you're at American Family Fields of Phoenix, maybe you can grab an EG on your way in. Leaving, hey, it gets hot in March. If you're leaving, I just want something to cool me down, go get yourself an EG. All right, we don't have very good frozen custard down in Phoenix, so there is Culver's, but it's just not quite the same, So go get yourself some EG's, an Arizona staple, next time you're in spring training. 6:05 start tonight. That's it for this mailbag episode. Brewers and Mets. It's going to be a lot of fun. In fact, tomorrow, obviously, it'll be locally blacked out, but if you're living outside of Milwaukee, you can watch the Brewers and Mets on FS1 tomorrow. So that'll be on with Corbin Burns' start. So that'll be a lot of fun to see him on the national stage if you live outside of Milwaukee. Otherwise, we got you covered on Bally Sports Wisconsin for each of the next 3 days. Again, no tweets tonight. Sorry, I'm working the other job, working with TBS. And then we'll be back tomorrow night tweeting along and watching with you guys for the rest of this series. If you haven't already, hit subscribe. Subscribe to our YouTube. In the Hopper is up there the Devin Williams breakdown. It's been great. It's good to be back in the Big Apple, and let's see what the Brewers can do against the Metropolitans. Let's meet the Mets. It's a heck of a year of what they got going on over there. So we'll see you next time, back on Thursday. Again, no episode tomorrow. Back on Thursday. Until then, keep on swinging.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.